Welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call on this Halloween night. If you need a roof, make sure you call Ireland
Everybody
Contracting.
needs a roof, Richie.
They're the best in the business, Gene. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. That's why they're #1 in Pittsburgh. They can do anything.
Not only
right?
roofs.
Yep, not only roofs. They do windows, siding, gutters.
Dog grooming.
Dog grooming, anything you need. 1-800-NEW-ROOF is the number for Ireland Contracting. That's why we named this show Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, because they are so good at contracting, and especially putting on roofs. Give us a call right now on the Borders and Borders hotline, 412-575-2600. You know, I do want to bring up something cool I saw on Twitter tonight. Andrew Filipponi tweeted a picture of Juju Smith-Schuster was actually trick-or-treating in Avonworth tonight in his full Steelers uniform. I retweeted it, so if you want to check out my Twitter timeline, you can see it on there. But I think we're going to show it on KDKA-TV News tonight. But you know what? This guy, I mean, he's only 21 years old, right? I mean, he's a kid. So he should be doing stuff like this. And I really think this is why the younger generation, kids growing up, love a guy like Juju. I mean, can you imagine if you were 8, 9, 10 years old and you're a big Steelers fan and you actually see Juju Smith-Schuster trick-or-treating in his uniform?
Yeah, it's a nice thing. Very clever. But really, if you are 21, you shouldn't be trick-or-treating.
Yeah, well, you're right about that. But
this is funny enough that I'm going to let it go.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. And I was out trick-or-treating tonight, but I have 2 little daughters.
But you're not 21.
Yeah, I'm a little older than 21, so I think you're allowed to trick-or-treat when you're older than that. But with two little girls. So we had a great time. They had a ton of candy, and I brought half of it back here to KDK tonight. So if you want any candy, I don't know what you like.
I'll get some on the way out.
Yeah, I got Reese's Cups.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, Snickers, Kit Kats, Mounds.
Talking my language, Richard.
Okay. All right, let's go out to the phone lines, and we're going to go out to Dave out in Bedford. What's up, Dave?
Hey, I had a question for you, Rich.
Good.
Everybody talks about the head coaches of the Steelers. We've only had so many in the years.
3.
Real years. I think they had only about 4 centers through that whole time period, too. I'm not sure, but...
They had a few more centers, Dave. I appreciate the phone call, because you can go back to like the Justin Hartwigs, and I'm missing a guy in there before Marquise Pouncey.
Jeff Hardings.
Jeff Hardings and Hartwig, and before that Dermontti Dawson. But I mean, yes, center is definitely a position.
Been very lucky that way.
Yeah, they've been very lucky, and they've had some very, very good and very few centers.
Went from Mike Webster to Dermontti Dawson. It's 2 Hall of Famers.
Yeah, and Marquise Pouncey, do you think he's a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, probably.
Maybe. Pretty good at his position, maybe one of the best in the NFL. Thanks for the call. Let's go out. Back out to the phone lines, and we're going to go out to Alex out in the north side. What's up, Alex?
How you doing, guys? I'm going to make a couple comments here.
Okay.
Go ahead. Take all the time you need.
I find no reason, first of all, I'm shocked with James Conner. I don't think anybody expected this. I don't think there's any reason Bell should start when he comes back. He's not going to come back, great right away anyway. There's no reason to sit Conner right now. And unfortunately, we'll find out about this defense here in the next few weeks. We're not going to be playing Baker Mayfield. I think we're in the same position. Yes, they look better, but I think we're in the same position where we're going to have to score 30, 40 points a game to win the Super Bowl. I just don't see this defense being able to stop some of these teams here coming up.
You know what? I appreciate the call, Alex, and they've done well lately when you look at what they've held opponents to. But, yes, it was the Cleveland Browns and Baker Mayfield this week. You're right. They're going to have to score points, not only if they want to win the Super Bowl, if they want to win any game, Gene. And to go to James Conner, yeah, he deserves to be the starter. But, the one thing that I do want to talk about, look what he did at Pitt a few years ago before he got cancer, before he got hurt. He would have been a #1 draft pick. So why shouldn't he be doing this? Other than the injuries, and that's probably the thing that maybe is the knock against him, the injuries.
Yeah, I mean, he's a 3rd-round pick, so I think that's why people are surprised. I think the Steelers are pleasantly surprised, too. But, I mean, he obviously had a lot of ability. He's practically a 2-way player at Pitt. And I don't think there's any sentiment out there to sit him down. I don't know where that's coming from. As far as the defense goes, Mike Tomlin said 3 or 4 weeks ago that he thought the defense was finding its rhythm, and that's turned out to be true. Sure, they played Baker Mayfield this past week, and he really went backwards. But the Steelers' defense had a lot to do with it. Now they have Morgan Burnett back. I think they're improving pretty rapidly myself.
Yeah, and Joe Hayden, he pretty much takes away half the field. If you can get another cornerback on the other side, looks potentially like Artie Burns or Cam Sutton will be in line this week because Cody Sensabaugh's hurt. Artie Burns benched last week because he was late to a walkthrough on Saturday.
Yeah, he did take reps today, though, with the first team. So
yeah, I expect Artie Burns back in there. So, you know, that's maybe your one question mark. But if we see the Artie Burns we saw at times last year, this is a pretty good defense. And that's what I think everyone expected, didn't you? I thought the secondary would be the strength this year.
Well, I didn't know. That was one of those things I'd have to see it to believe it, because I especially didn't know what Burnett was going to do. It turned out he had a hard time getting on the field, and I wasn't sure what Davis was going to do. I think he's played pretty well, and I didn't know what Edmonds was going to do. He's done okay, you know, for a rookie, but I think they've come along, you know, slowly but surely.
All right, back out to the phone lines, and we're going to go back out to Jim out in Trafford. What's up, Jim? How was the trick-or-treating out there in Trafford tonight?
A little wet tonight, so, you know, just like everybody else dealt with. Question I had, or more of a comment, I was talking to my brother earlier today about if and when Le'Veon Bell comes back to the Steelers, with how well that things are going with James Conner, that if he comes back, what do you do with Le'Veon Bell? That you don't want to go and actually ruin what they have going on right now. What would you think about him maybe being like a punt and a kickoff returner, something that's not going to ruin what they have going on the offense right now?
You know what, Jim, they're going to find a way to use him. He's not going to be a punter, kickoff returner. And, you know, I know they've said that these other guys are better than him in the slot. So they're going to use two backs. He might potentially be a third down back, giving James Conner some rest. I think James Conner is your starter. You know, even if Le'Veon Bell shows up next week, he's going to need a couple weeks to acclimate himself. But James Conner is going to be the starter for 2 weeks beyond when Le'Veon Bell shows up.
Sure, at least. As I'll say again, there is no sentiment anywhere to sit James Conner. Le'Veon Bell may or may not come back. I think he won't, frankly. But if he does, it's going to take him 3 or 4 weeks to be ready to play. And, you know, that situation will give itself some clarity as we go on. I mean, it's ridiculous for us to sit here night after night trying to figure out what's going to happen when something may or may not even happen.
I'm with you, Gene. I kind of have this feeling that he's not going to even show up. At this point,
what's the point?
Yeah, if I'm him, I don't show up. Why risk getting hurt in 6 or 7 games if you sat out 10? Right. Why do it? For what? Because then it really would be a bad decision if you do that. So if I'm him, I sit out. He's going to get a big deal next year because the Steelers will not franchise him. And I'd have to look this up, Gene, and you might know this. If they would transition him if he didn't play, what is that based off? Because it's usually based off what?
Based off your earned income, and since he earned no income, that equals nothing. Now I don't know exactly how it plays out when you have to actually sit down and sign the papers, but the Steelers just won't do that. It's too mean, actually. That they probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that, but I mean, some organizations would just to do it, and we'll see. All right, we got to take a break. Back with more of your phone calls, maybe some tweets coming up next. Stay right there.